And good evening. It is 10:30 Wednesday night. Means it's time for the TFM Live Podcast brought to you by the FullMountMMA.com. I'm Sean Stanley, and as always, joined by Brian Coyle. Brian, how are we doing this evening?
It's good. I haven't tested positive for a drug test, unlike the rest of the UFC.
Yeah,
so
I'm waiting on that second sample to come back for myself. I'm sorry to tell you.
You better hope that B sample comes back good, Sean. Oh, man. Of course, we're referencing the fact that, Brock Lesnar, John Jones, the Chad Mendes suspension. If you're a major player in the UFC, be very wary of your next USADA drug test coming back positive, because it is not good right now in the sport of mixed martial arts. Sean, where do you want to begin? Because the Jones, finding out what it is, we can go with that route. We can go with Brock Lesnar not failing one, but two drug tests, including one in competition, finding out what he tested positive for. Mendes gets a 2-year suspension. Where would you like to begin in the saddest state?
Can we just start on it as a whole? I mean, honestly,
Sure.
let's just look at it as a whole, because there's an issue somewhere. And nobody can just say exactly what it is as far, they say I can't pronounce it, so you may have to help me with that.
Sure.
The drug
Which
that
one?
was the estrogen blocker, that the name of it, the actual name of the.
Let's just go with estrogen blocker, because there's going to be a lot of big drug names
that's what I'm saying.
At your way.
I can't even sound smart.
The next, let's say, 45 minutes here on the show. But John Jones tested positive for an estrogen blocker. Brock Lesnar tested positive for an estrogen blocker.
Same thing, same one.
Same exact one.
And supposedly this estrogen blocker can be found in some supplements, but again, you're responsible for what you put in your body. You know the rules. We've said it over and over here. And we talked about it before when like a football player, you got people there that can tell you yes or no if it can go in your body.
Yeah.
And you can try to push the envelope as much as you want, but it shows they're going to catch you if you try.
And I just want to put this out there to anybody who wants to ask more questions about this or have a healthy discussion about performance-enhancing drugs. In that case, you can tweet at us at the Full Mount, at bcoyle11, at SS Sports Talk if you're listening live on sportsovertime.com, or if you're listening to the show on a podcast, on YouTube, on the FullMountMMA.com, all that good stuff. Tweet at us. We'd love to have this interesting discussion, because this topic, mainstream media is acting like the sky is falling on the UFC. No, we knew this would happen. We knew when USADA came in and started doing Olympic-style drug testing almost on these guys that, some of the biggest names, some of the dominant athletes were going to test positive. Did we think it would happen the week of UFC 200, that both headlining guys would happen? Probably not. But this was going to happen. It would get worse before it got better. Everyone talked about this.
Yeah, not only that, but any supplements you're taking could still be in your body. That you have taken, especially if you try to push them. And again, supplements have some of these drugs that they're looking for in them. So I could go to GNC, take a USADA test, and test positive. Again, It's about reading what you're putting in your body. All this stuff about, and I was one of them at the beginning. I'm like, look, I can go buy it at GNC. How can that be? Hey, the rules before you go in there and do it. And to just do it is almost like you think you're above. To me, you think you're above whatever the testing is.
Yes, this whole situation is crazy. The John Jones news. Let's start there, because that was the earliest in the week, I guess. If you want to talk about that. We didn't even get to talk about Brock testing positive the first time out, because we recorded last Wednesday. So Jones it's revealed on Monday what John Jones tests positive for, and it's an estrogen blocker, which, when you think of this, I got this a lot talking to people about this yesterday. Why would John Jones take an estrogen blocker? Well, the whole concept of an estrogen blocker is it's when your body, let's have a science lesson real quick, Sean. For example,
I'm here.
All right. So men create testosterone and estrogen. Testosterone a higher level than estrogen. Mm-hmm. Estrogen is the female hormone. Testosterone the male hormone.
Yes, again, everybody creates this. Everybody has this.
Women create more estrogen than testosterone. Yes. So when a guy like John Jones is taking an estrogen blocker, I think it's more he didn't realize what was in his supplements because Jones has never been, had the reputation of being a guy who was always on top of everything. So that's why I think this came into. And Lesnar might be a different story, which we'll get to. An estrogen blocker will lower the amount of estrogen in your system. That's exactly what it does. And it allows naturally your body to either create more testosterone or that level and that difference between the two will have a greater impact on muscle mass, athletic ability, all that good stuff that we know that testosterone does. You have a question, Sean?
No, I was saying it helps your water weight.
Yes.
You don't retain water. That's something that,
There's some diuretic stuff that also are in charge of that. The Nevada State Athletic Commission revealed that John Jones tests positive for an estrogen blocker. They issued a temporary suspension. We heard about this. This was being bandied around. Rashad Evans of CBS Sports, the great Chael Sonnen on Joe Rogan's podcast, telling very interesting stories about John Jones.
Yeah, it was quite enlightening.
Avoiding USADA drug tests by hiding underneath a mat. We haven't confirmed that story. We haven't heard the other side of it, but multiple fighters have said about this story. So Jones is facing a 2-year suspension by USADA. And that's not on top of what the Nevada State Athletic Commission can do to him. So this is it's really bad news for John Jones because his prime is being wiped out because of the fact that he took this substance, whether knowingly or unknowingly, if it was in a supplement or not. It sounds like everything that I've read, it's probably in the bodybuilding supplement that he took. And remember, this was a guy who kind of just jumped in the bodybuilding after his life was kind of in shambles and he was putting on all that weight. And we're watching those deadlift videos and it's like, oh my God, John Jones, this skinny dude, all of a sudden is powerlifting 500 pounds. And maybe somebody in that gym not paying attention to the USADA list is like, hey, John, take this. I mean, we're speculating here, but this is the kind of situation that we would think would be involved with John Jones. He had never tested positive for a banned substance previously. He had tested clean on all his previous 8 drug tests this year. Of course, we know the story about Jones testing positive for cocaine metabolites prior to UFC 182. But then again, cocaine wasn't on the banned substance list.
Imagine that.
Yes, because it gave you no boost in athletic ability. It just, I don't know what Jones was doing the night before a fight taking cocaine, but that was that.
You feel no pain on the cocaine.
Yeah. What'd you think of when you heard about this from Jones? Is it one of these things like, does that make sense to you? Were you expecting it to be something else? What were your thoughts when you heard John Jones test positive for an estrogen blocker?
Well, I mean, it's not uncommon, as you said, to find them in bodybuilding supplements and things like that. A lot of them have an estrogen blocker in it. That's why a lot of the bodybuilders use it. As you said, it makes you cut down on the estrogen levels and produce more testosterone and things like that. Also, like you said, it can serve as some of them as a diuretic type thing to keep water weight off of you. So, look, I mean, maybe it's something where he was trying to do something else and didn't realize that this was in there, but he liked the other stuff that he was trying to do. You have to remember, he's going into probably one of the most important fights of his career because it was him and Daniel Cormier, a lot of talk going back and forth, and it was him on the big stage, him with a chance to cement his name. And I'm not going to say he knew that he was taking it or not because, again, we were just speculating, but you're responsible for everything that goes in your body if you're an athlete.
That's just the way
you should
it goes.
know what's going in. I mean, what are we going to say? Oh, somebody gave him a shake and he drank it and then that's why he did it? No, there was enough levels in there to test positive on tests for USADA.
You're headlining the biggest mixed martial arts card of all time. Maybe pay attention to everything that you're putting into your body. It's your one literal job. And we're coming after Jones here. He's been heavily criticized for this with good reason. But we have to talk about the other guy who tested positive for this, and the reaction has been very different, which I'm very curious to get your thoughts on this, Sean. Of course, Brock Lesnar, On Friday at 7 o'clock, the show ends that I work on CBS Sports Network. I'm walking from 57th Street and 11th Avenue in New York City down to Penn Station, which is about, a 40-minute walk. It's taking a nice stroll. All of a sudden, I pull up Twitter during my walk. Brock Lesnar tests positive at UFC 200 for a banned substance. Or prior to the UFC 200, excuse me. Mm-hmm. The article goes up. Everyone's freaking out about it. We don't know what the hell's going on. Then we find out earlier this week, that Lesnar also tested positive for the same substance in in-competition sample. So this was on July 9th, the day of UFC 200. And, people were asking, why is it taking this long for the test to come back? It takes a while. The way the system works is you're not going to be able to turn around a test that quickly, and they're all unknown samples. Like, the people who are testing these samples don't know whose it is. They're just probably going off a number of some sort or whatever. So there's no chance of we're going after this guy. It's the way USADA talks about it. It's an anonymous process that spits out the result at the end. So Lesnar tests positive again a second time, and then it's reported by ESPN and the LA Times that it was the same estrogen blocker that Jones tested positive for. There was a story going around that Lesnar was training outside. He has asthma, as been duly noted throughout his career, and he took a breath of an inhaler, and that caused him to test positive. It appears that's not the case. What was your reaction to Lesnar testing positive for a banned substance as opposed to Jones?
You look at Brock Lesnar, and it's been noted. Mark Hunt noted it. He looks like a guy that you could go after and say, you can say he's a big country boy, whatever you want to say, but if I had to pick one of the two that were on a PED, I'd probably go with Lesnar over Jones. Yeah,
when you look at him, the whole thing with Lesnar was he's a genetic freak. Yeah. That's the way he's been booked throughout his wrestling career. That's the way he was when it came to the UFC. And now that image is obviously shattered because of this, the PED drug test.
But see, I don't think so. It's shattered in the UFC spectrum, but not in WWE. That's...
Yeah. And who knows, we don't know the ban list in WWE, so we don't know if this was on it or
not. It'll be on it. If it's on USADA, usually it's on there. Because, they suspend for marijuana tests and things like that. So I can guarantee you this is going to be on there. But again, he's under a contract to where it's I believe a per performance. So he's not like a in-ring competitor like that. He's on a per performance contract. So is that going to affect him the same way it affects these guys that do night in, night out? I don't know how they're going to work that out.
Yeah, but the thing with Lesnar was I saw the Twitter reaction to Jones, and it was obviously vitriolic because, the guy foiled the UFC 200 main event right 3 days before it happened, all this crazy stuff. When Lesnar tested positive, I'm seeing, of course he did. Look at Brock Lesnar. It's an absolute...
Honestly, I thought it was a diuretic.
Yeah.
Because there's no way in a month he's going to get down. If he walks around at 290, 300 pounds, he's got to get to 265. I guess in a month you can do that, but that's a big change to lose a pound a day.
Yeah, and we had kind of speculated to try to figure it out. And, of course, we don't know.
Plus, he looked shredded, too, when he was on there. Compared to what he did look like.
Of course he did.
You saw his last fight, and I know he had a diverticulitis and things like that, but it just looked like a complete form. Even from his last WWE fight, it looked like a completely different Lesnar.
And Lesnar is probably a guy who keeps track of all these things. It just seems to be the way his mentality. He was an amateur wrestler. Earlier levels of drug test, obviously, back in those days. But Lesnar, of course, is getting older in age. If this was something that he was taking purposely, it would make more sense than why Jones was taking it, given the fact that he turned 39 a couple of weeks ago. So when you get older, you naturally create less testosterone. So this could be the particular reason why Lesnar was doing it. He could have had a tainted supplement. He could have taken something wrong. We won't know unless Brock says something about it. That's the way these kinds of things go. When he tested positive the first time, he sent a statement to the Associated Press saying, "We will get to the bottom of it."
I guarantee it's the same thing. It's a supplement. I can guarantee you it's probably an over-the-counter supplement, or one of the sponsors sent them something and them not even thinking about it. Like, oh, if our sponsor sends it to us, it must be clean or something. So then they took it and it's not.
I couldn't imagine just taking something. It's just insane to me. This is like their guy.
No, I agree 100%. I mean, just the fact that anybody in their camp wouldn't be like, wait a minute. I mean, you look at what John Jones' camp lost out on.
Oh, man, those guys must have been the most pissed off of anybody.
I mean, a week out from a fight.
They're driving around in Escalades, thanks to Jones. I mean, they've joked about it on the Embedded. It's like the whole crew's got Escalades. Well, you can't throw new spinners on those because Jones didn't get his payday.
Yeah, and the repossession might be coming at you, too.
Who the hell knows at this point? And then you've got this other sort of thing. And I mean, we can save the Lesnar. Like, there's a whole nother podcast that me and you could do on Lesnar and WWE and all of that kinds of stuff. Lesnar's not going to fight in the UFC ever again. There's no way.
Because at the minimum, he'll probably get a 2-year suspension at least, and that'll be 41.
And they'll come after him too because of the way this kind of, he had the exemption that the UFC granted.
Well, that was the whole thing. Like, everybody, I think that was part of the whole thing on Twitter. Like, of course. I mean, you gave him an exemption. I mean, you had to know something. And whether they're like, they sit there and they're like, oh, I was listening to somebody, and they're like, I have to believe that Vince McMahon and Dana White said, look, you're going to be tested. Are you clean?
Yeah, and he passed 3 drug tests.
Yeah.
Before he tested positive for that one, and then the in-competition drug test in UFC 200. So, Lesnar tests positive. So, Mark Hunt asks these questions like, yeah, I called it in the beginning, and Hunt is asking for half of Lesnar's purse on Twitter. Then he goes for, screw it, I want all of the money. And the way this kind of thing goes is...
Well, he said he wanted all the money or his release, right?
He wanted at least half of the Lesnar's $2.5 million fight purse or his release. Now, he called for all of it. What I was reading, Ariel Helwani was reporting on this, it doesn't seem like they can take all of the money away from Brock. They can fine him, and Brett Okamoto from ESPN was reporting that Brock has to pay the fine, even though, like, if he doesn't want to fight again and doesn't want to ever be licensed again in Nevada, he's got to pay the fine because the state of Nevada asked for that money. So whatever the fine may be, when they adjudicate the situation. And then you have Hunt asking for this money, and Lesnar's got no reason to give it to him, no legal reason. I mean, we've never seen, like, he's not going to give him $1 million out of the good of his heart. Like... The pay-per-view buys still count. The money still comes in. Like, this is as dirty as that sounds. This is the way it is going forward.
Yeah.
This is what happens. And Hunt, I haven't got a chance to watch it because it happened.
And we're sitting here. We're sitting here like, I mean, what happens if? And this is hypothetically, of course.
Yep.
What if it comes back and Lesnar somehow can prove that he didn't take anything, but it was something like they're saying. The inhaler, the whatever. I mean, what then? I mean, what if it's
I don't know.
Not exactly as like somebody just, because again, I think the problem a lot with PEDs is everybody thinks, oh, the guy put a needle in his butt and now he's trying to become something he's not.
No, it's not every 80s movie imaginable.
No, exactly. But I mean, it's so hilarious that it's automatically assumed that, how do you know they were trying? I mean, obviously they were trying to get an advantage, but is it as devious as what we're thinking, or was it just being a bonehead?
We don't know. We won't know unless Brock says something about it. This is not Rocky IV where they're building Drago in the basement and
you get the needle
with
the liquid coming out of it.
No, it's just not. I mean, and it's funny because of all that, Stallone was on the most steroids in that movie. But I digress. This is Hunt released a video saying he would head up a fighters union about this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I haven't been able to get to watch it because it literally happened probably a half hour, or probably an hour and a half ago. But this is the kind of story, and then it just kind of snowballs and everyone freaks out about it. But guess what? They're cleaning up the sport. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Dana White's off at the Republican National Convention because I don't know why not.
You gotta put your face everywhere, right?
Yeah, Darren Ravel is tweeting out that the UFC new owners could potentially sour on the deal because of the week that UFC's had, which I think is a load of BS because, it's Lesnar tested positive. What did you expect? Jones is gone. You have all of these other guys that there's Fox Sports was trying to buy the UFC for $3.8 million or $3.8 billion. So that's the sport is going to be fine. And I've seen the sky is falling on Twitter the past week.
But let me ask you this, okay, Brian? If you're these new owners, $4 billion, you're thinking about purchasing this company. Now all of a sudden you're seeing every face that you think, okay, that's a dollar sign. There's dollar signs. There's dollar signs. Whoop, they're gone. Whoop, he's gone. Whoop, he's gone. You don't think that's going to sour your deal if you're the one with the $4 billion sitting there?
Well, they had to know this was coming. If you're going to spend $4 billion on something, you have to know the regulations and the hoops that you're jumping into. And then, Sean, it's July 20th. In about a month, Conor McGregor's fighting. And when all of those pay-per-view buys come in, they'll be just fine with Brock Lesnar testing positive and never coming back ever again. So this is one of those things where...
Unless McGregor loses for the second straight time. Then that cash cow is probably cashing out too.
But here's the thing. That money that still comes in from UFC 202, you figure it out later. But again, you're looking at, then you put Nate Diaz, I guess, as your money guy because by then he'll have a name, but this is, if they're souring on the deal, I'm saying now, this is not, I'm just going off this. I can see where, you got to start looking at this going, okay, when we're looking at this, we're going into the biggest pay-per-view, and yeah, I'm sure they made tons of money on UFC 200, but also since coming out of UFC 200, it hasn't been, blue skies for the UFC. No, it has not been.
And as you look, you got guys still testing positive. And look, ultimately everybody's going to try to get that advantage. So how long does it go, and when does it? And then now you've got fighters saying the U word, union.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think that will ever work for the same reason it never worked in pro wrestling. And I know it's two different things.
No, but you're exactly right.
I can guarantee you right now, Mark, if you want to sit on the sideline and wait for a union, I can guarantee you there's a heavyweight right now training at any gym across the U.S. that they can get and put in there. Will he get the same amount of money that you'll get? No, they're probably going cheaper, but you know what? They're going to find somebody else.
Yeah, there's always another fighter. There are a finite amount of huge draws that the UFC has at this point in time, but it's up to the new ownership and the matchmakers to build these new. You have to, make it work. Conor McGregor fell into their lap, and they were smart to build him the way they did. Now you have to continue to do that. You can't just put all of your eggs in one basket. So the UFC will have to figure it out. The new owners will have to do it. You'll have brand new stars coming in. Heck, we interviewed a possible star in the bantamweight division that's huge. We talked to Jimmy Rivera. You can find it on the website right now on thefullmountainmma.com. Number 14th ranked bantamweight Jimmy Rivera. I had the pleasure of talking to him this weekend over the phone. We have a nice little interview about it. He talked about his Uriah Faber fight. This is a guy who, if he goes out and beats a big name like Faber, bantamweight gets even more loaded. Like, this is the kind of thing you have to be able to create these new fighters and give them new opportunities. And when your big draws go down, this is what you have to have a backup plan. We've seen time and time again guys pull out of main events over and over and over again because of injury. This is the way this sport does. And was the price point $4 billion a lot? To me, did I think the UFC was worth more than the Dallas Cowboys or Real Madrid or Manchester United? No. But this is the price we paid. This is the life we live. This is where the new owners of the UFC have to do some work and figure out what their direction is. Because you have Brock Lesnar testing positive and he's gone pretty much forever. He's in the WWE draft. He's doing that now because there's no way Brock comes back and is able to fight ever again in the UFC the way this kind of all shakes out. John Jones is gone for a little while. You have to figure out your stuff. Chad Mendez, who's another big name, who's, got overshadowed by all this stuff, got a 2-year suspension from USADA today for a previous drug test from June. So these fighters are going to test positive and things are going to happen. Is this USADA system perfect yet? No, not by any stretch. But we're slowly figuring all this out, what's going to happen. And it's up to the UFC to adjust and motivate their new fighters and figure out which guys they can rely upon and which guys they cannot. Sean, we got a lot more to talk about here on TFM Live, the official podcast, thefullmountmma.com. If you guys want to learn more about Lesnar suspension, Jones, the interview we did with Jimmy Rivera, and a couple other things, we'll be breaking down in the next segment the UFC Chicago fight card, which doesn't have as much buzz as you would think, which is very surprising given the participants in the main and co-main event. So we'll talk about that. A couple other news items we'll get to as well. I want to talk. We didn't finish talking about the UFC Sioux Falls fight last night, and there's one particular guy that we need to talk about because, man, John Lineker could throw those hands. It's absolutely ridiculous. So we'll talk about that. Remember, we said it in the beginning of the show. You can find us online, thefullmountmma.com. Tweet at us, questions, anything you want us to talk about on the podcast, all that kinds of stuff, at The Full Mount, at BCoyle11, at SS Sports Talk. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Leave a review. Leave a rating. You can search TFM Live. It pops right up. So we're going to take a quick break. We come back. We'll head on into UFC Chicago and talk about that and more on TFM Live, the official podcast of thefullmountmma.com.